Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday, it's September 8th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And interesting day. Um, Mostly just a range day, really. This is a pretty good sell-off here, and we already had one leg down. So once we started down here, you look for a measured leg, and we pretty much got it almost to the tick. I think we went a couple of ticks further. And then we started working higher again, and we didn't quite get back to the highs. A few people asked me about this area right in here, and I made some notes on the chart just so I wouldn't forget to talk about it. I actually posted this on the forum too. A couple of people had asked there, so we'll talk about that when we get to it. But relatively strong day here as far as this move down on the second leg. But after that, we just weakly traded back up, and there just wasn't a whole lot of movement here, really. You'd probably look for a measured move here as well. There's leg one. And then we turned up shorter there. And you can see that's right in the middle of, we went a little bit higher and then we pushed again higher than that. But I think what happened in the end, we just got stuck in this tighter range over here. And you can see that right there now that I colored it. It's a little bit more obvious. I think that's all that happened was we just got stuck in that range. And I've noticed lately, after 3 o'clock, there's just no trading. There's a whole hour in there in those few bars. And so prices just really quit moving. And it's really been that way rather consistently. You can see it there. You can see it right there between there and that line. Same thing there. So I'd very highly recommend that you be out around 3 o'clock because you're not going to get much movement after that. Definitely don't enter any trades. I was saying it was probably okay to enter trades up to 3 o'clock, but I'm kind of reevaluating that idea now. I think that you don't want to much enter a trade after 2:30. You might even stick to the original 2 o'clock rule we used to have because the market's basically dead at 3 o'clock. So you can see here if you entered a trade long off these lows, which would have been the after about 2 o'clock, you might have been okay today. Let's look over here. 2 o'clock, you can see not much happened, but it continued to move down. So if you're following the price action and trading here, 2 o'clock hit right in here, so we continue to move down, although we'd been in an uptrend. So you're probably just going to get stuck in a trade. So I wouldn't trade much. I wouldn't enter any. I think you could manage a trade easily up to about 3 o'clock, maybe even slightly after. But I think I would get out at that point because you're not going to get much movement. But the main thing is I wouldn't enter any new trades after about 2:30 because you only got about 30 minutes worth of movement left based on what we're seeing recently. So you don't want to take a trade at 5 to 3 and then prices not go anywhere, or even 10 to 3. Because once 3 o'clock hits, it's pretty much done. So just keep that in mind. But you can see the big picture there. Let's back out and go through the trades, and we'll talk about this area right in here too, this reversal area. But 7 o'clock came right up here as we're making these highs, and you can clearly see this channel, this yellow channel working up. You get a close outside, you try to go higher once, twice, and it fails, and you got a long way back to the EMA. We were way overdone for a pullback. That's a great trade to enter right there. If you can get in it, you may not get in that trade because it gaps over. Don't chase it. You can drop a limit order in there and see if it comes back. I don't know if it would have or not, but that's a great trade if you can get in it. We drop on, you can clearly see that channel working down. We get a close outside new low, and then we bounce. There's actually a little small channel working up there, and you get a close outside. We don't quite make a new high, and it sells off again. And that's kind of what it does over here. This is almost a repeat pattern of this, except this goes much further. So always keep that in mind. If you see something that happened once on the day, if it same type thing happens again, It'll generally respond the same way. The only problem is we'd already pushed through the EMA here. Um, but once we had this close outside new low and that big bullish bar, it actually opens below and closes outside of this one. I like going long on that one. It's a little aggressive because generally you want to wait on a higher low, which comes here, and you don't get a setup then. And then this thing basically fails and turns down, but you don't get a real trap up here either, so no way to really trade that. There is a lower high right here, but you got to go low right into that support area. Never a good idea. And then you get this little spike in channel, and we get a close outside here and attempt at a new low. You definitely don't want to go long here on this big bar right into the EMA because we don't have a new low there yet. You may argue that there's a close outside, but it's not convincing. There is a close outside and a new low, but I don't think I would risk it here. But when we get this failed second entry short and you get a chance to go long just above the EMA, I like going long there, and that's a nice trade. You clearly get two quick legs up and then a correction and another second entry long that confirms the trend line. And this second entry, this is a little congestive, but being right off that key entry point and a fairly decent bar right there, I like that one. If you didn't like that, wait on the higher low, which comes here, and that's a reversal or continuation of the trend, and that's a nice move. And then of course we find resistance right back up here near these highs. But notice here how we made it to the top of this channel here, and here we come up short. We find resistance before we get there, and then we come back and we make a lower high. So here's the second entry on my chart, either entering one tick above this. It does have matching lows, so you might choose to go long above this one, which is right back into the highs, but it never triggers anyway. And if you went long above this one, you're breaking the rules because the signal bar is no good. So there's no entry on my chart, but some of you did have a better bar there and a better setup. But that's your first clue. And then you made this lower high was another clue. And so I would be real careful about getting long here. And you can kind of see prices working lower. And that was the thing, or working sideways there. And that was the thing on the other chart. Couple of charts I saw, there was clear sideways action too, even though they had a decent bar right here for the signal bar. So just be careful getting long into that resistance. And you can see we had it went all the way into the overnight. Of course, we traded higher, but you can clearly see resistance there, here, and with that double top and lower high. So this is a failure right here. It doesn't go very far and then it turns down. So you might go short right there. It's a little bit aggressive because that's definitely congestive by that point. But then it comes back. Actually, what you could do, you could actually look at this as a double top. And so a first entry, second entry, and this actually breaks higher and fails and turns down. Look how bearish that is. That's a great place to go short on a trap. If you're skilled enough to trade failures and reversals, that's what you want it to look like. And this thing just takes off. So you probably get a runner on this. You might be able to ride this all the way down. That's a fairly strong move until down here you get an overshoot. So after that, you got to be careful because generally you get a break soon after. We did push on down. I don't see any entries down here, and push higher. And then finally, even though we had a overshoot, we still had a break and a move to a new low. And then we bounced out of there. I don't see any reason to buy here. There's no previous support here. You need at least a higher low, which comes here, and you're going long right into that. Look at all that resistance across there. It pushes on through, but still not a good place to enter. There's a second entry here, but there's no setup on my chart. That bar's not bullish enough, and it's an inside bar. If you had a decent signal bar, you might go long there, as long as you got room to get out before here, which you easily do. And then we just start working sideways. And I wanted to explain this one. Notice there's a new swing low and you get a first entry and then a second entry. This is a failed second entry short, but that looks really congestive, kind of like a range, because it turns out to be a range. So I'm a little leery of, you're not really looking for a reversal here or a failure here. But when it comes back and makes a higher low and gives you a triple test right there, and that's actually a second entry long too, you probably want to pay attention to that. And so as long as you got room to get out for these highs, which you do, I like that trade. And of course, then it's obvious it's a range, and uh, you get a chance to. This actually breaks a little higher right here. I think it does. No, it just makes a triple top. It's still a fairly decent signal bar with plenty of room back down to here. So I still like that trade. I was thinking it broke higher, but I guess it didn't. Drops on down. Get a first entry. There's a second entry long here, but that's not a decent reversal. And you see what would happen. You would have got trapped, and still no setup here to go short. But you do get a break of your trend line, move to a new low, and you make a few bounces. You can't go long on that big bar. I mean, let me just see how many. It's 18 ticks, so you need 20 ticks just to get in that thing, and it's just not worth it. It gaps over and runs straight up, so you may not have got in any way. But this is a new low. It's a double bottom, so you get a first entry, second entry. That's the place to enter, and it takes on off. It's another great trade. And it just keeps running higher until you get a break. You actually had a close outside. It's even though I drew this thing as a whole, it's probably you'd probably been better off to play this. It's really almost a spiking channel, so you'd probably been better off to play it like this. Like so, and you can see that does fit much better. I played it from the bottom, but I think it's really, the uptrend really starts here, and you can see you come up and you actually get a close outside right there. Not a very convincing, but you get one in a new high, then you try to go higher once, twice, and this looks very similar to the same thing over here. Look how far away you are from the EMA, and this one does break higher, so that I knew thought I'd remembered it breaking higher, and that's where I was getting that from. So this breaks higher, turns down. You could go short one tick below that. I'm not crazy about those engulfing bars. And if you didn't go use engulfing, you may not have got filled here. So you may not have got a chance to enter that one because it just gaps over and keeps going. So if you waited on it to come back, you could have gotten filled. I don't know if I'd have done that, and it does run on down, so you still would have worked that way, but not nearly as good a setup. So and that's just a first entry short. Then you get a first entry, second entry, but you can't use this signal bar, and this one's all the way back to the lows, so you don't want to go short there. So notice you get a little trap here and a first entry, you pull back, you get a second entry, and that confirms that little trend line, gives you a failure. I like going long right there. You don't get much more than a scalp out of it, and it comes back and it takes all the stops and then gives you a break of the trend line and goes two legs back to the highs again right where you expected it to go. And then we just kind of go into this channel. There's no entries here. Then this is just too congestive. And finally you come up here. I think you got to have a lower high here, which you don't get till down here at the lows. So you don't want to go short. This one's tempting because you do get a close outside and suddenly a new low. But I'm not, it looks too congestive. Then it comes back and it gives you a really bullish bar here. And again, it's just really looking congestive here. There's no reason you couldn't have gone long there, honestly. If you move that to the hard right side of your chart, it looks pretty strong, and it definitely looks like rejection. But the fact that it didn't break above that high, and that high, and that high, and you can see the other resistance over here, that concerns me. So I don't like entering there. And notice it does come back real quickly. And then it just looks like congestion. So you might have entered there just based on the way it looks right there. I mean, it looks pretty strong. The only problem is pay attention to this resistance. Look how many times since we shot back below it right there, other than that one push up, which usually that kind of erases it, but you get another one there and another one there and right there, and that makes that I mean, that's 3 times you tried to go higher, although that's looks like a little bit of a trap. So if you took it, you would have survived, but you would have had to ride all that out. And it's just not worth it. And then, of course, you got this small channel right here working up. And that takes you into the 3 o'clock hour. And so there's nothing else there. So other than maybe entering there. And another thing to think about, this is 240. Well, what time did this bar? This bar, that's 2:47 when that the time when that bar closed. So that's 15 minutes to 3, and you can see what happened just in that last 15 minutes. It would have worked, but it's just not worth risking that late in the day. So that's all there was. There just wasn't. Again, there's a lot of movement here, but there's no chance to get in this safely. I mean, this is a pretty strong trend, but you don't get any. The only real setup bar you get is right there. Move this. You can see that signal bar right, or actually right here off the trend line. So maybe it's more like that right there. So you got that one, but you got congestion there, and you can see that bar would have, way away from the EMA. Not a very good setup. I mean, once you realize it's kind of a runaway trend, and if you really want it, if you got a good signal bar off that key entry point, maybe you take it. But I don't see any more. There's not any more setups. And then you get the overshoot, and even that's not a very good setup. So there's just not a real good chance to enter this trade, that move. And even going up here, you don't get much of a chance. There's a second entry there, but that signal bar is not any good. So if you did have a good second entry, maybe you go long there. And then there's that one, of course. And then you're just in a range, so you get a couple of range plays before it takes off again. And you could have looked at this as a new high. So first entry, but your second entry failure is there, and you would have got stopped out on it before it went right where you went. They just trap people right there, fooling them. It's not look how congested it is. Not a very good setup for a failure. So just not a lot happening today. So anyway, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to wrap it up. Short week this week. Tomorrow will be Thursday and wrap up our week. It feels like it went by quick, but that's just because it is a quick week. Because of the holiday, we had a shortened week. So I just wanted to back out again here and show you the big picture. And you can see it's clearly a range day. Early on, we had a little bias just as I was posting this. And then, of course, it's obvious it looks like it might be a range, but we could have pushed higher. And if we had gone higher, you're looking for a measured move up. But instead, we pushed down, so you're looking for a measured move down. And really, you might have measured this one from here because it's a little higher. Still gets you to the same point, really. So yeah, you might have. There's the first leg, and then we came up, and so your second leg would probably start from right there. And that actually gets you almost to the tick to that first bounce right there. We ended up pushing a little bit lower, but they'll do that a lot of times just to trap people, make them think they're continuing lower. On a move that strong, you almost always get a retest of the low, and you see it right there. And really, that was it. So I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow and wrap up our week. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.